Well, for what you need to know about QAnon and these new developments, we're joined now by Hannah Knowles, a national politics reporter, for the Washington Post, who has written about Trump's recent rallies. Also, we're joined by Mia Bloom, professor of communication at Georgia State University and author of Pastels and Pedophiles Inside the Mind of QAnon.
Hannah and Mia, welcome to Morning Rush. Thank you for being here and taking the time out this morning. So, Hannah, let's start with you. It was always suspected that Trump gave kind of a wink and a nod to QAnon despite his denials. We heard stand down and stand by. But what changed that? It was seemingly openly embracing this in Ohio last week.
Yeah, and so I think, for example, in 2020, you saw Trump saying, I don't know much about this movement other than I understand that they like me very much, which I appreciate. So kind of, not, pushing them away, but not embracing it openly either. And then, recently you've seen at rallies, he's closed out with this song that was released in 2019. It's called Mirrors, and it's also popped up as this song used by QAnon under the slogan WWG1 WGA, which is this, common QAnon phrase. And so, it didn't get much attention when he first used it in Pennsylvania, but then he used it again at his rally in Ohio last weekend where I was. And a lot of people took note because the crowd reacted and they were raising their hands and pointing their fingers, and that just wasn't something that people had noticed before. And then you also saw him recently. He actually shared on his social media account a photo of him with a Q label, and so just embracing it more openly.
I'm sure a lot of people, when they saw the images and the video from the crowd at that rally in Ohio, had no idea what the hand gesture even meant. I know I had not seen it before, but there is a sense of eeriness when you do see something like that.
Right, absolutely. It caught a lot of people off guard, and that's why this has been in the headlines recently. On top of that, on his Truth Social, his own media platform, he has amplified, according to one study, at least 50 separate QAnon promoting accounts there on his platform. Otherwise, in other words, there is more than a wink and a nod here. There is an increasing embrace, and that's the reason we're looking into this. Mia, I want to understand, though, how big is this movement? Who is most likely to be a part of it? Because every time I have to say on the air, this is a group that believes that Democrats are Satan-worshiping baby eaters. It sounds so absolutely ridiculous. The only question is who is believing this? Why are they consumed by this? And how are they linking it to Trump? What is going on in their head?
It's a good question. I mean, I think it's very worrying. If I actually told you what some of the polling showed, either 8 times.
Okay, Mia, we are having a hard time hearing you. Not sure if we can get that fixed audio-wise. In the meantime, though, let's get to Hannah. Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, both members of Congress, and both admitted Q supporters have campaigned with Trump. What is the reaction of others, sitting members of Congress? What have you seen?
Honestly, I haven't seen too much reaction. I might have just missed something, but I think at this point, it's not incredibly surprising to a lot of people, maybe, that, at this point, people know, that Trump has kind of nodded to this movement. And so, I just don't think it provoked a huge reaction from people beyond, people taking note of this online and in the media.
And Hannah, let me follow up on that because Alex mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene. Let's be very clear. The potential next Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, is going to reveal the Republican agenda today ahead of the midterms in Pennsylvania. By his side will be Marjorie Taylor Greene. So he's having this big Republican moment to unveil an agenda. That's a big political deal in a midterm year. And standing next to him in this obviously politically choreographed moment will be a member of Congress who supports QAnon and who has been stripped of all her committee duties because of things she has posted online. What does that say about the current state of the Republican Party that he needs or wants her by his side today during a moment like unveiling a major political agenda?
I think it shows that, Marjorie Taylor Greene is no longer just at the total fringe of the Republican Party. And this year we actually saw a number of candidates running, talking about QAnon, and not all of them were successful. But it's clearly, not just a singular figure now talking about this. It's everywhere.
Hannah, I believe that we're able to hear you now. But hopefully, yeah. Mia. Oh, I'm sorry. Hannah, we know you could hear us. Mia, so the last question that Rob addressed to you, is this a loud minority? What about this thought process is even taken and taken into consideration by these people?
We've had a few different polls conducted either by the conservative think tank AEI, American Enterprises Institute, or by the Institute for the Study of Religion. And it could be as many as 30 million American adults that believe some level of this QAnon insanity. So it's very problematic because you're looking at millions of potential Americans, but also it's disproportionate among Republicans and evangelicals. And in answer to Ron's question, it's not all uneducated, low information voters. There are people who believe in QAnon with, degrees from even Harvard University. So we have to take it seriously. And we also have to take it seriously politically when you're looking at people like Doug Mastriano or even, his name is J.R., Majewski in Ohio. These are people who are pushing QAnon narratives. But here's one thing, before you lose me, people who don't believe in the election and are election deniers, there's a possibility that they're not going to come out to vote. We saw this in Georgia when there was the runoff in January. After pushing this notion that the election was rigged, a lot of Republicans said, well, why should I bother? And so in some ways, it's a double-edged sword.
Because if you sow distrust in the system, people decide not to take part in that system. And that's why Republicans, some of them were angry with Trump for saying it was rigged because it was going to dampen turnout for Republicans, and it may have. Hannah, politically speaking, though, I mean, I'm still trying to process the number you gave, 30 million. A second ago that we just heard from Mia. It's more than 10% of this country buys into this. So is it fair to, Hannah, is it fair to call QAnon supporters a political force in this country that we do have to reckon with? Is that overstating it or understating it?
Totally. No, I think that's fair. And I've definitely seen articles, comparing it to, it's larger than a number of organized religions, right? So it's definitely a force that people need to take note of, and that people have, they've grappled about what to do with, and clearly they're still around and very influential.
Mia, with a mix of election deniers and QAnon believers on the campaign trail, what concerns do you have for the upcoming midterms and then the aftermath of the vote? Like we mentioned earlier, before we got to you guys, there were several QAnon supporters and followers that were at the Capitol on January 6th, and that violence that erupted from that situation it's pretty scary to think about when you think about the aftermath of something like this.
It is very concerning, and as early as 2019, FBI Director Christopher Wray said there was a possibility of terrorist violence coming out of QAnon believers. And in fact, this was reiterated by Merrick Garland and also by DHS Alejandro Mayorkas. What I would say, however, is we've never had a terrorist group with 30 million people, thank goodness. So I think it's important that we understand it's the people who are QAnon and something else. If they're QAnon and Proud Boys, if they're QAnon and militia or KKK or active or former military and law enforcement, that combination is very dangerous because they have both the training and the incentive. But these are people who are dedicated Trump supporters, like down to the very end. They will stand by their man.
And I wish we had more time. We never do in TV, but on the election denial front, it's worth noting that some of those deniers are winning primaries and may hold office. The people who denied the election may be in charge of election apparatus come 2024. And then to your point on that, if there are people in this country who believe that Democrats are worshiping Satan and eating kids, they can use that belief to justify all kinds of things, and that's dangerous in a post-1/6 country. Last point here, and this was from the New Yorker. They questioned why Trump is perhaps making these appeals to the QAnon. They said possible that Trump is motivated by a more immediate concern than multiple state and federal investigations of his conduct, and that he's signaling to prosecutors he won't go quietly, so they had better beware, meaning I have these 30 million with me. Be careful what you do, Merrick Garland. That's the moment we're in. I wish we had more time to chew on that. That could eat up the rest of the show.
3 hours,
but
yes.
A really, really important issue for where this country is politically right now.
Yeah.
And your insight, both of you, is invaluable.
Yeah, Hannah Knowles, national politics reporter for the Washington Post, and Mia Bloom, professor of communication at Georgia State University and author of Pastels and Pedophiles Inside the Mind of QAnon. Again, thank you both for being on the show this morning. Have a great weekend. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yep.